The NFL's current overtime rules do not allow for a sudden death situation until both teams have possessed the ball and the game remains tied. However, if that team gets the ball first and they score a touchdown, the game ends. And since this is the case, there's just way too much advantage for whoever wins the coin toss, and the coin toss is such a trivial thing to do to decide a game. So today I'll be discussing why the NFL needs to change its overtime rules for good through changing its policies. With the current rules in place, there's a lack of fairness among the game, as a team who possesses the ball first can score a touchdown on their first and their only drive, and therefore just end the game that way without giving the other team a chance to come back and try to make it fair. So with the rules that are in place, it doesn't allow NFL teams to be as competitive as they should be, even though the NFL is the most competitive football league. With the NFL, you base teams off their record, and when there are ties, it's always a toss-up, because it's like wins and losses. And when you have ties, it makes it that much harder, and it hurts teams as well as fans when it comes to championship hopes. A reason that hasn't been changed is due to the fact that it restricts the ability of referees to have the final say when it comes to the end of the game, because refs can make a lot of bad calls, and they don't want the referees to be the ones calling it for the end of the game. So the NFL has played around with these rules for years. However, it hasn't changed based off the sheer fact that they just want to make it easy as possible on the referees for them not to mess up the game. Officials tend to miss or make bad calls every game, so when it comes down to the wire, they just don't want them to be the ones deciding. Furthermore, in order to change the rules, owners of the teams need to vote on the rule, and a majority is needed from the owners for the rule to undergo change. And for some teams, that the teams that just don't go into overtime that often or have a record of winning in this type of overtime, so those owners just don't feel the need to vote to change it. Like last year, they had a vote to change it, and nothing changed. So the NFL must change its overtime rules in order to create a game that allows fairness for both teams to have chances to win the game. So in the article published by The Ringer in January of 2019, the editor stated, "The current rule is bizarre. The original policy was amended because the team that won the coin flip had disproportionate advantage. From 1994 to 2010, the team that won the coin toss won nearly 60% of overtime games. Since the sudden death rule was tweaked to exclude first possession field goals in 2012, the disparity isn't nearly as dramatic at 52.7%, with that difference partially being because the home team wins more." So some combat this argument saying, well, defense matters too, and maybe it might not be super fair for one team not to have the offense the entire overtime, but their defense should be equally as good. And you can just counter that by saying, well, if you think defenses are that good, then both defenses should get on the field, not just one. So the NFL must change the overtime rules in order to create a game that allows for fairness for both teams to have chances to win the game. So the current rules just are flat out unfair and unjust to NFL teams, as they put the faith of the game in a team season within a trivial coin toss. The NFL has been using the coin toss system for years, as at heart, a coin toss is a 50-50 heads or tails. However, we know that when a team wins that coin toss, they actually have a 60% chance, and statistically a 60% chance, to go down the field and win the game by just scoring a touchdown. And that's not fair. That's not a 50-50, it's a 60-40. The USA Today stated, for a second consecutive season, a team with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations in overtime of last year's AFC is going home because of a coin flip. If Patrick Mahomes has not been able to get his hands on the ball in overtime of last year's AFC title game wasn't enough to convince owners that the format needs to be changed, maybe seeing an aging Drew Brees rendered helpless will. These players work their tails off all year in the offseason and even during the regular season just to try to make their dreams come true to win a Super Bowl. And when a coin toss is the one deciding your fate and not really how good you are as a team, then change has to be there in order to make the game fair. So the NFL must change its overtime rules in order to create a game that allows fairness for both teams to have a fair chance to win. So the overtime period also allows for ties at the end of the game, which is not exciting for fans to see, as well as it makes it hard to get a good idea of like what the playoff race is really like. When you're not dealing with wins and losses, you're just dealing with ties. So the website Sportscasting stated, the fact that some games end in a tie is odd and unnecessary. The tie is a relic from a bygone era in sports, and the NFL would do well to eliminate this from their game. Ties make playoff implications more convoluted. They also leave both teams feeling unsatisfied and both fans feeling unsatisfied after a hard-fought game. With just a few tweaks, the NFL's overtime system could lose these altogether. Ties do not prove or show how good a team actually is, especially in overtime, and a clear winner leaves the fans satisfied with an outcome, as well as leaves the teams knowing where they stand in the league. So the organization that needs to be called upon to fix this rule is the NFL itself and the NFLPA, which is the NFL Players Association. The NFLPA would need to make a case for the change, and with many players being open about not being happy with the rules, I don't think it would be hard to get that back at all. So, as I'm an avid NFL fan, and there are many of us out there, and we know change is needed. The first thing that has to be done is create a petition that serves our NFL fans to show the organization that change is needed. The next thing would be for the NFL organization to present the NFL with the need to change, which is very possible, as the case has already been stated, to them physically and all over social media. And lastly, the best way to make the game more fair would be changing the rules to what college has. And basically, college, both teams possess the ball. They start at the 25-yard line. I would say you start at the 50-yard line because you know how advanced NFL offenses are, and having them so many weapons go down 25 yards really isn't that hard. And I think I'd just be going back and forth. So it would be in everyone's best interest to change these rules. With making the rules allowing for each team to have a chance to be competitive, then fans can be pleased, as well as fairness that allows each team to have good odds to win.